Meet the Lot, native token of Lukki Exchange and the most potential tool for investing this year. Trade now on P2B, B2B and Lukki.io.
Thanks very much. It's great to be in Dubai. My first time in Dubai. I've been to Abu Dhabi before, but actually not Dubai, so this is great. Thank you. Bit about myself while we're waiting for the presentation to start. I've been in the blockchain Bitcoin world since late 2012, early 2013. I started a company called Gift. It was a gift card. Thank you. Gift card platform based in Silicon Valley. I'm actually from South Africa, if you can tell by my accent. I moved to the Bay Area about 11 years ago. And Gift was it is a payment card, digital gift card service. And we actually adopted Bitcoin in 2013 to deal with payment fraud. And so we became the biggest retailer in the Bitcoin ecosystem within 24 months, and we were doing, I think, 5% of Bitcoin blockchain transactions at one point. I sold the company to First Data, and then I went looking for something new to do, and I wound up realizing that one of the biggest problems was solving for identity, and especially using the blockchain as a way of distributing identity information to consumers, giving them the control of their information, and dropping the costs of KYC and digital verification. It's a very interesting use case, right? Using identity and the blockchain, and how you move away from the central databases that governments have, credit rating agencies have, social media websites have, and they've all been hacked. So how do you move to a point where consumers can take control of their data and use it in a way which is just faster, better, cheaper, more efficient? I think the previous speakers have been talking about these benefits. And so we bought the domain name identity.com. That's launching later this year. And we've actually built a lot of the technology, which I think it's been alluded to today. But today I'm actually going to speak more about some of the other use cases around blockchain. So let's start just from the bare basics around blockchain. What is a blockchain? What is it? How does it differ really from a database, right? What's the difference? The difference with a blockchain is when a transaction is initiated, it gets broadcast to a set of nodes. And those nodes validate the transactions and essentially creates blocks of transaction sets. And once a transaction is completed, it cannot be changed. So that's the difference. With a database, you can go in, you can update it. In the identity world, and having come from South Africa, the South African passport's not worth what it used to be. I used to be able to walk into London or Switzerland pretty easily without having the need for a visa. But because of what happened in South Africa, where we had a lot of migration in there, a lot of fake passports being created, that door was shut, and so it all became a visa-based system. Now, the reason for that is anyone can go in 2018, 2019 and create a record in the South African database of someone who was born 20 years prior and issue them a passport. That can't happen in blockchain. The timestamps are immutable, they cannot change. So if you look at the history of Bitcoin and blockchains, go back to 2008. Satoshi Nakamoto, him or his group of people released a white paper which really solved one important problem, the double spend problem. And that, if you think about it, is the ability to prove that something digital is unique. Now, prior to that, things like movie files, music, videos, etc., they could all be copied multiple times. But with blockchain, you actually had a situation where money couldn't be copied. You couldn't have two copies of the same Bitcoin because of the way the network validated transactions. So fast forward 6 years, you had Ethereum launching in 2015, and and today we have thousands of coins. So the market's really changed. Not all these coins will be valuable in the future. We did a coin, the CVC token. We built ours around identity and doing KYC, but there are a lot of flavors of what's out there today, and everyone's trying to figure out how to make these tokens work in the real world. So blockchain allows for decentralized identity, access and identity, and because the simplest way of explaining it is when your credentials on your device, if you walk into a building or you want to prove who you are, all you need to do is be able to sign a message with the private keys on the device, and someone independently can check on the blockchain to ensure that whoever is in control of those private keys own that information, as attested to by third parties. That's the use case for identity, and we can expand on that. But I'd like to go into some other ones. Storage is interesting. Smart contracts, voting is extremely interesting for us. Obviously, it ties into identity as well. Money is the clear use case right now with Bitcoin. and IoT as well. So there are a number of different areas, different companies focusing on how to take these use cases to market. Now, I may disagree with some of the other speakers early on in the sense that I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all. I think there will be different blockchains that have different use cases because when you're building technology, certain technologies need to make trade-offs in order to be functional in the real world. Ideologically, you'd argue they don't, but practically they do. And things like scale become very important. I'm going to skip this one and go to prediction markets. So Augur is a very interesting a blockchain and token. Augur is basically it's a prediction market where you can create markets around anything, outcomes of sports events, weather, political events, etc. worldwide, and it's based upon a peer-to-peer network where people are using these tokens to stake and bet on the outcomes of events. And if there's consensus within the network on the outcome, people effectively it's a deregulated betting system on outcomes. Now, that is very interesting because you can build automated systems, for example, around weather prediction markets. You can predict whether there'll be a bad weather event on a certain day or a certain point in time, and you can actually insure yourself or your business against it. So but these markets all exist in a decentralized fashion. No one controls these markets, and it's actually functioning today. Augur is one of the best examples of blockchain out there for a use case which is not, I would say, not standard and not something which most people are even using today, but it acts as a protocol where you can build a lot of interesting things on top of. Stable coins is one which is very much overlooked. The fact that you now can create digital dollars is very interesting. Gemini has done it, Coinbase has done it with Circle, and essentially Bitcoin obviously is more of an investment. It goes up, it goes down, it's reasonably volatile, but you can actually peg US dollars now. They've already done this, and you can take these US dollars and you can actually create systems that run on fixed rate pricing in a digital form. And you can store these dollars on your own wallet and effectively take it out of the system. You can put it on a hardware wallet, put it away, and your funds are guaranteed. No fractional reserve banking behind this. And that's important because if you look at how the US runs and how the banks are overexposed and overleveraged, if you ever wanted real dollars in the system, this is a non-custodial way of doing it. Decentralized file storage. So IPFS and Filecoin in particular have been focusing on this since about 2014. It's been 5 years now. The network actually hasn't gone live yet. They will go live probably at the end of this year, early next year. In 2017, they raised $275 million to build out this network. And there are now billions of files on IPFS that are actually running, and Filecoin will be going live, again, I said, later this year. Now, what is interesting about this is, as you can imagine, there's a lot of use cases for how we store data on the internet, and people in other parts of the world have issues accessing data from, let's say, for example, from here to the US, there's about a 240 millisecond lag when you're loading a web page. And today, when you type into the browser HTTP, it's essentially going to a server to fetch a file. And with something like IPFS, you can actually find that if someone locally has that file, you can pull that file from a local server here, and it speeds up the internet quite dramatically. So it now improves connectivity around the world and ensures that and this is while maintaining whatever rule set you want. So you still have different rules to ensure that content in certain regions is, if it's censored or protected against, the system won't draw that content into that region, but you can do it at a speed which is 10, 20, 30 times faster than available today. And this runs on a token effectively. We've got, at Civic, we've got payments as well. So we've got payments and identity, and it's reusable identity with payments, so you can do things. Interesting enough, I think the next slide should cover it. Nope. I have a slide which talks about vending machines and how we use payments and identity on vending machines. Tari is another interesting use case. Tari is solving the problem of scalping of tickets. So when you have a situation where there's a concert event and people buy out rows of tickets and then resell it at much higher prices, they're basically tying their systems to avoiding people purchasing more tickets than they should and reselling it and taking profits and scalping it away from the venues. It's live, it's functioning right now, and they're launching a blockchain around this to ensure integrity of the system. Solana is an interesting one because there's a lot of debate around layer 1 and layer 2 scaling. I won't go into the debate too much right now, but essentially Solana has managed to develop a high performance blockchain capable of 710,000 transactions per second at layer 1 using proof of time as a base algorithm for the scaling. And this is a really interesting system because one of the issues around blockchains is how do you get throughput to scale. Visa and MasterCard runs at about 50,000 transactions per second right now, not on a blockchain. So Solana is orders of magnitude faster than those organizations in a decentralized system using around 15,000 nodes. Very interesting technology that's emerging right now. So if you look at databases, typically it's the create, read, update, delete functions. And with blockchains, it's just create and read. You cannot update, you cannot delete. It's a very important distinction between the two. And that's why often people, it's about using horses for courses, as they call it. Like what are the right ways of using blockchain technology and which are the wrong ways? And in systems that require updates or deletes, you shouldn't be using a blockchain. So where we're going is with decentralized identity. We think decentralized identity can create a world without identity theft, without dependencies on identity authorities, credit bureaus, physical IDs, username and passwords. It makes the world a lot more secure. And we can trust in the technology. And it's not mutually exclusive. I mean, we had gold, we had physical gold, we used it in commerce, we had gold coins. Then we moved towards banknotes and banks and governments issuing bonds, etc., and other bearer certificates. And now we have digital commodities. We have Bitcoin, we have others out there as well. And so it's just an evolution of I think, society as a whole, giving us more options in which to store and transfer wealth and value. Identity today is actually broken, if you think about it. Most of the world runs on paper. Passports, birth certificates, etc. How do we get to the point where all this is digitized and placed in the hands of the consumers and giving them the ability to protect the information wherever they go, so that you never have these situations where you have these humanitarian crises where the information is lost? And this is one of the biggest opportunities I think that are out there. And that reduces costs, it makes business and commerce a lot easier, faster, more seamless. So technology today is more accessible. We have 4 billion people with internet access worldwide. 1 billion have passports, but 2.5 billion people have mobile phones. And these phones can act as conduits to hold this data. And if you can increase the number of people worldwide who had passports and had travel papers digitized, it improves the mobility of this world, it improves commerce, trade, etc. We also have about 2.6 billion people at last count that have had their information hacked, stolen, etc., and available on the dark web. So that's the other side of the equation. How do we secure the data? I believe technology will fix digital identity. And currently you use physical IDs to prove who you are everywhere you go, but there'll be better experiences enabled by blockchain. So here's one example that we're working on. Effectively it's vending machines for medication. So think of things like asthma medication, insulin, etc. If someone had a prescription, these machines are available 24/7. You don't have to wait for a pharmacy to be open, especially with life-threatening medication. And so having a digital identity and the ability to prove that you are who you say you are, and for example, prove that you have a prescription for that medication, should mean that you could get your insulin immediately if you needed to at 3 in the morning. Using verified identity for universities, there's a lot of exam fraud as well. That's another great use case. IDs get stolen, etc. And again, just if you need to update or delete records, again, I have to emphasize, blockchain is not the right place for this. And so, with that, these are the use cases which I think are. I think there's missing one, but. So storing personal information, storing DNA or biometrics, and storing personal credit records on a blockchain is a bad use of blockchain because you can never delete those records. Can you imagine someone took personal records from a hack and put it on a blockchain? All your information will be out there forever. So I think that is probably going to happen at some point where people start doing that. The Yahoo hacks of the world, etc. That information eventually comes out. So these are the sort of scarier side of blockchain. And so the future with blockchain, I believe, is disintermediation, efficiencies in commerce and trade, and creating new economies around the digital tokens and these services that exist that function using blockchains.